Hi, I'm Jessica Schiller Silverman, and I want to warmly welcome you to the Alive podcast, where wellness and business come to life. I stepped away from a six-figure career in venture capital in San Francisco to start my own venture, all inspired initially from a podcast. Learn how in this powerful show full of golden nuggets that will help you learn how you can come alive in your creative prowess while creating financial and energetic flow. Each episode will uncover my secrets to debunking the starving artist myth. Come on, enjoy the ride, and come alive with me. As a woman, do you long to feel held and supported as you always hold everyone around you in your aura? In light of Women's History Month, I invite you to be held and healed with a dear friend of mine's podcast and recent guest, hosted by Tina Conroy, Healing Meditation for Women on the Women's Meditation Network, created by another dear friend of mine, Katie Kremitzos. Healing Meditation for Women helps support my path to healing as a ritual to release anxiety and clear and dispel negative energy and stress. I recently listened to Archangel Michael's clearing meditation and immediately felt so supported and held through Tina's guidance and divine care in channeling this clearing. What I love most about these meditations is the heart coherence felt in each episode that immediately calms my nervous system in minutes. The entire Women's Meditation Network has a massive library of meditations for everything from anxiety to sleep, deep healing, presence, peace, and connecting deeper to your feminine within. I invite you to follow the Healing Meditation for Women podcast or the entire Women's Meditation Network now wherever you listen to podcasts and start listening for free today. Just search Women's Meditation on your favorite podcast app and follow, or visit womensmeditationnetwork.com. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Alive podcast. Today, I am honored to be in conversation with Dr. Karen Kan. Dr. Karen Kan is a medical doctor and doctor of light medicine. As a #1 best-selling author and founder of the Topacan Healing Method, her mission is to help sensitive souls heal themselves, harness their gifts as a superpower, and express their soul's mission. She is passionate about empowering sensitive souls like earth angels, indigos, starseeds, and empaths to shine their light so we can pull the world out of darkness. Amen. Through her Academy of Light Medicine, Dr. Karen teaches students her 3-step Topacan Healing Method, TKH, which involves aligning with the highest source of information, asking quality healing questions through divine muscle testing, and then activating specific healing frequencies to do the clearing and healing. Like a spiritual detective, Dr. Karen can discern in detail the foundational reasons for a person's symptoms. With expert mentoring, Dr. Karen empowers her students to get precise divine answers and teaches them how to activate divine energies for self-healing. Dr. Karen says, and I quote, "Working with me is like learning how to be tapped into a spiritual supercomputer. I am sort of like Yoda from Star Wars, training you to be a Jedi Master in your healing." Dr. Karen's Academy of Light Medicine offers multiple self-healing programs and 2 levels of training in the Topacan Healing Method, Level 1 for self-healing and Level 2 practitioner certification. What a beautiful bio. An honor to have you here today, Karen. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome, Jessica. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you. You are such a dynamic, beautiful soul, and I'm just excited for the listeners to get to absorb your energy. As I told you, I did on a different podcast months ago, and I just remember feeling the resonance and the connection to you and your story, and I was like, I have to have Karen on the Alive podcast. So this has been a long time coming, and just so thankful to have you here today. So we'll start with the question that I ask all my guests. Those of you that have been listening for a while, you know the lingo. Who is Dr. Karen Kan?
So it's interesting when people say, or ask, who are you? Or we ask ourselves, who am I? There are multiple layers of this question, right? So if I were to say, what's the truest reality of that, I would have a very strange answer, and now we'll give you both answers. But the answer would be, I am a fractal of the diamond of the one and the all, just like you are a fractal, having a human individuated experience. But at the end of the day, we are all just that one being, that one source, whatever people want to call it. Now, in the more practical sense of who am I? So in this particular incarnation and this human body in this timeline, I am the one that is here to shine a light and innovate a different way for humanity to be, let's just say, for each person to have the opportunity to elevate their vibration, their consciousness, so we can co-create a very different future reality for ourselves than the one we have right now. So heaven and earth, if I like to say, so that is who I choose to be in this reality.
Oh, such a beautiful explanation. I love the concept of heaven on earth and elevating, right? The collective consciousness, creating a different reality, as you mentioned, than the one that we are living in the physical realm. But then I just love how you start off with, I am a fractal of the diamond of the one and the all, right? Again, bringing in that sort of esoteric and beautiful spiritual energy. So, so beautiful. And I too am a light worker aligned with your mission in elevating the collective consciousness with this podcast. So feeling the beautiful resonance. Yeah. So you are, as I am, a highly sensitive soul. And an empath. And of course, also we'll talk about your starseed lineage, as well as you're an earth angel. But before we get into that, let's talk a bit about what it means to be a highly sensitive, some of the challenges, right, that we face, but also, right, being highly sensitive can be a superpower. So what does it mean to you to be an HSP or a highly sensitive soul?
Well, thanks to Dr. Elaine Aron and her colleagues being able to put a name on it, because sometimes how it is in our society is that if there's no research and there's no name, then it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? But people experience it. They go, why am I so different from other people in my family or my friends? And so I love how she and her colleagues have kind of put a description so that people don't have to feel so alone and so different and so weird and whatever. According to the latest research, which I was asking her staff about for my book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower, they gave me research from 2018, which is different from what most of us quote. Most of us quote that 20% of the average population is considered highly sensitive according to their criteria. In 2018, they did another study, and that was 30%.
Really?
So what was fascinating, though, was prior to getting that research data, because I was just looking for the exact paper, because the book publisher was asking me for the exact research link, right? And I didn't have it. So I was looking for that link. And prior to getting the answer from Elaine's people, which took a number of months, actually, I tuned into source, whatever people consider that to be. Some people say God, some people say the 0 point field, some people say the Akashic records, whatever works. So the source of information, I just asked, I'm like, curious. I would say the source, well, my observation is that the people that I'm seeing, the children that are being born, a lot of the young people that I work with, there seems to be more than 20%. So I asked source, so what, of all the humans on the planet, what percentage would be considered highly sensitive according to the criteria Dr. Elaine Aron and her colleagues have set out? And the answer was 33. I thought that was very interesting. Very different from 20, right? And I'm like, yeah, that feels about right. But then I wasn't going to say that in my book without the data. So when her people gave me the data, it was 30, I just started chuckling. So these are people that are, sensitive to maybe bright lights, noxious smells, loud sounds. They feel stressed when that happens. They don't like being around very, very negative people. Their difficulty in shopping malls, concerts, anywhere with a lot of energies and there's a lot of people. And they love sometimes to be just alone in their space by themselves. They love nature. They tend to be very intuitive. They tend to be very creative and really, think out of the box. Unfortunately, our society doesn't necessarily congratulate or give kudos to those that are sensitive. In fact, they think that if you're sensitive, you're a wimp. And they tell us to like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, stop crying, why are you crying? Have thicker skin, or, my ex-husband used to say, well, be like a duck. Let the water just kind of go, just sweep off your back. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we tend to get conditioned that there's something wrong with us.
Yes.
That there's something wrong with us.
I'm shaking my head. I like have goosebumps. I'm laughing. I'm shaking my head here because I'm resonating so much with everything you're saying, just from my own personal story. My brother used to say that all the time. Be like butter off a duck's back. Or my mother, basically suck it up, buttercup. You have to push. That was always her mantra. You have to push through life. And I always felt so alone. Elaine Aron opened my eyes as well with her book, as well as the documentary, Sensitive, The Untold Story, with Alanis Morissette. And I remember watching that movie, and for the first time in my life, understanding why I am the way I am, and that it's not that anything is wrong with me, because all my life I was told that I was too sensitive or I was too much, the opposite extreme, right? Because I have a lot of energy as well. And society, as you said, does not reward sensitivity as a superpower. It's quite the opposite. Why do you think that is? Why do you think society doesn't understand or embrace sensitivity as a superpower?
Well, things are changing for sure, but it seems to be rather slow in the scheme of things. We went through many, many years ago a matriarchal type of society, and then we kind of dove into a patriarchal type of society, and we're still healing from that. And Anodea Judith, for example, one of her latest books, talks about the marriage of the divine masculine and feminine. And so there will be this balance point in the near future that both will be respected. But for now, in the patriarchal society, the left brain, or the logic brain, is lauded as the be all and end all. So people quoting the science, if you're not logical, then, you're not really scientific, and you don't know the truth, and you don't know the facts, totally ignoring the right brain, intuitive, creative side of humanity. Yes. But the whole brain is actually the best when we can use both the logic and the intuitive side, creative side together, and that's called whole brain decision making and whole brain, creativity. So athletes, that they get that gold medal, that have that amazing performance, they're using their whole brain, right? They're not just using half their brain. And so the science is already there, tons and tons of science, but it takes about 60 or more years for that science to trickle down into our schools, into our, medical schools even. And so it's really kind of slow, but it's really neat how, in the esoteric world, the spiritual world, and even like Dr. Joe Dispenza and all these other amazing researchers are really heart math, showing the heart, the brain, the heart, the coherence, the connection is so very important. And before it would have been like, what are you researching? Heart?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love, like you said, this marriage and this immersion, and I feel society has been shifting, which is really beautiful. But unfortunately, like I said, it will take maybe 60, 80 years to catch up, hopefully sooner. I do feel the pandemic was really a kind of a push for us light workers to awaken, right? And you mentioned too, I'm going to go back to the 20% statistic that was historically, and then this new study that it's actually more than 30%. And I'm wondering if some of that has to do with the fact that it was always 30%, but there were a lot that were sleeping or maybe not aware, right? That they were even a highly sensitive. Like for me, this is something that I just found out probably in the last 7 or 8 years, right, of my life. So for 35 years, I was unaware that this is why I was in the world, right? And maybe what my mission is, and maybe how this can be channeled, right, as a higher frequency to help elevate the collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Well, with some of these scientific studies, it's really important not to necessarily take everything from face value. It really depends on where they found the people to do the study and the age group, the timing. So, from my understanding is that there are actually more sensitive children being born. That's just personal experience and me speaking to source. That's what I was getting. I believe, yes, there are more people activating for sure, but most people know that they were highly sensitive after they figure out the definition and what they went through in childhood. Like, oh yeah, that was me. Right? Like when you look back, they're like, yeah, I was the one that cried, or yeah, I was like, one that, would cry when somebody else got in trouble in class, right? Like, so I think that even if they didn't acknowledge their sensitivity, I do think the numbers of people who are sensitive are growing. And one of the other reasons, Jessica, I believe that as well, is because we're going through a consciousness expansion on the planet. And even people who, let's just say clearly, were not considered sensitive, the ones that were saying all the stuff, like stop being so sensitive, blah, 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 right? That there were some times where I've been interacting with some of my friends in that space. I'll give you an example. So I'm in a Kung Fu class with my husband's a Kung Fu teacher. So I'm with another student, and the other student is very, left brain science, like not really woo-woo at all. Nice guy, but not that. So we're doing this exercise, and he's making an error on the one side. So just for the fun of it, I talked to him in my head, and I said, hey, Gene, you're dropping that right arm, And so I'm not saying this verbally. I'm just literally, we're playing, and I'm just giving that telepathic comment. He almost immediately corrects it. Of course, then I had to stop and go, oh my gosh, you heard me. He goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, I just said in my head, Gene, your right arm was dropping, and then now it's on. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And he's like, okay, whatever, but the point was that here's someone who's considered not sensitive.
Yes.
Right. Who could receive the telepathic information that I was sending him. And even my dad, who's very he's like 80, Chinese man, no emotion, just, like keep it all inside. Right. Even he's blossomed into this, thank you for praying for me. He has a cancer symptom. So he was just asking for prayers. I mean, I'm like, is this the same person? Like, it was just so amazing. Now, maybe you can say, well, Dr. Karen, your reality's changed. You've changed. You're not the same person. Who knows? I'm not saying it's because of me, but I think it's so cool just to see that even the non-sensitives are becoming more sensitive.
Yes. Yes. Or like you said, they're open to receive that. And I love both the stories that you told, because I always do speak about that, like the power of prayer and how someone doesn't have to be present or even aware that you're praying for them to receive the healing. And I just think knowing that is so beautiful, and that the world is awakening to that, whether they're sensitive or not, like that right brain type of energy, where we're not so stuck in the science and the tangible and the logic, but that we can accept that where we come from, we don't even know. You know what I mean? Like if we go back, as far as the time of creation, I mean, there's all different types of ideologies, but for me, it's like, I am so attuned to nature, right? You mentioned highly sensitives love to be in nature. And I always say, if you don't believe in any of this, just look up at the sky, like the sunset. My husband and I were watching it yesterday. It was one of the most beautiful sunsets I've ever seen. By the second, Karen, the hues and the tones and the ombres, it was shifting. And I watch sunset. I try to watch every single evening. It looks different every single day. It's like this beautiful show that nature puts on for us every night. And that's just proof that, like, we don't know what causes that. You know what I mean? We don't know how the colors shift and change. And right, it's just ever evolving. It's infinite, but it's just so beautiful to look at that, right? As physical proof, and know that we come from something greater than we can ever understand, right? With our human selves.
Yes, that's right. And we can enjoy it. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges of being a highly sensitive for you, and of course for anyone listening. How has this maybe challenged you in the past before you did this work?
Well, they say that some of the ways it works as a teacher is that you teach what you have to learn, right? Yeah. So that's the case in my case. So I went through really a dark night of the soul, which many teachers go through, where I went through fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmune disease, multiple chemical sensitivities, EMF sensitivities, gluten allergies, intolerances, and even depression and suicidality, right? So that's like a big mouthful. And I didn't realize at the time, being a medical doctor, you'd think, well, gee, you have all this information. So, at the time, it was kind of a mystery to me initially, until I realized, wait a second, my mom went through a lot of that, but she did it a lot later, and I was falling apart in my 30s. And I was like, wow, it was a beautiful opportunity to really empathize, because on some level, I really thought that she could have prevented that. Wow. Because she was on disability, and, she had her depressive moments, and we were at the brunt of her anger and sadness and whatever. And then having gone through it myself, I was like, whoa, I really could empathize for the first time, really empathize. I was a popular doctor, as female doctors often are, and are popular and very empathetic, but on some level, I still judged my patients. And this was a wake-up call, be like, wow, you were doing everything that you tell them to do, and you're still sick. Wow, right? So that was very humbling. And luckily, of course, I didn't kill myself. I went through a beautiful transformation. It was slow, seemingly, well, I shouldn't say slow, because 2 years to cure fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue is very fast. Most people are, yes, they never cure it. So unfortunately, but one of the things I finally realized after many, many, many years, even after I wrote my first bestseller, Guide to Healing Chronic Pain, a Holistic Approach, was that I, being highly sensitive, was at higher risk of having some of these certain disease names or titles. So fibromyalgia, which is kind of like feeling like you're hit by a truck, pain all over, chronic fatigue syndrome. Those are really common among highly sensitive people who have not known how to take care of themselves and their sensitivity. And one of the reasons is because we have really often really spongy, porous boundaries.
Yes.
And we sense a lot, and we don't even know that what we're sensing is not ours. So we will carry other people's negative energies as part of our big-hearted self. Not that it's healthy to do that. There's times and places for that, right? Yes. But we will carry layers and layers and layers of other negative energy in our auric field and elsewhere that weighs us down and makes us feel terrible. And so the autoimmunity, I've noticed, there is physical autoimmunity where, your physical immune system creates an antibody to something that they shouldn't create an antibody to, and then starts fighting its own tissue, right? But there is mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual, and dimensional autoimmunity as well. And nobody's talking about that. Wow. That's something I discovered. Wow. So when I work with sensitive souls, and we teach them how to do self-healing on themselves, we actually look at all those areas. So they're not just focused on, okay, I'm on the autoimmune diet, I'm taking all these supplements, right? It's not getting any better. Like, when highly sensitive people do the biological therapies, oftentimes they're missing a big part because they have not managed their energetic. So that's one of the not boo-boos, but, mistakes that highly sensitive people make, is that they will start doing everything that it works for everybody else, right? Which is not wrong, but they don't realize there's an other piece that they really need to address.
I love that you bring up that point, because I myself, and I'll use myself as a case study, have been going through this since August of last year. And so again, it was kind of hard for me to talk about because I've been healing people for years. And so how can I now suffer from this condition? For me, it's what I discovered on my own path. So like you mentioned, people trying to do all the physical things and reaching out for all the answers. And I was getting really frustrated. I mean, first starting with Western medicine because we have insurance, and then not getting answers. And they're saying, well, no, this is not connected. And I'm like, everything is connected. I mean, there is no possible way that, issues in my gut are not, connected to my sinuses.
Right. That's the first place I look, actually. Yeah. Funny enough that you said anybody with sinus stuff, I'm like, let's treat your gut.
Yeah. I mean, there's a direct, right? The vagus nerve is, there's a direct pipe, right, from the gut to the brain. I mean, your gut is your second brain. And so, of course, anxiety, depression, right? It's all fueled into all of it. Mental distress, chronic stress, which is another factor. And so I finally understood that I have a histamine intolerance, which I've been healing, since last August, still having some symptoms here and there. But yeah, then I went the functional medicine route and the supplementation and, cold therapy and all of that, my PMF mat and, some of that helped, nature therapy. But the energetics piece, I've always been doing this, but really was like, I had a light bulb moment. I actually had a session she was a previous guest. It was an evolutionary astrology session. And one of the messages that I received, she didn't say directly, but, from my angels and from spirit, was that you've given so much power to right, as we do as empaths, carrying other people's energy, listening to other voices, as you said, when I have the power within myself to heal myself. And I said, you know what? firing all these practitioners. I'm gonna, right, not in a bad way. I still have help and healing, and there's communities that I'm connected to for chronic conditions. But I was like, I am the healer, right? As you
That's right.
to heal themselves, I am the healer. I have the power, right? I already am connected to this world of spirit and energetics, right? And channeling. So why is that not as important, if not the most important, right? Piece, rather than supplementation, right? And all the physical, logical left brain things. When you combine the two, right? Like you said, it's that whole brain, that beautiful recipe for healing.
Absolutely. And in our society, it's totally understandable, especially if someone is not necessarily licensed or trained, in medicine, is to defer authority to those who are, right? And it's not helping. The pandemic in this case is like people are, just like on their high horse about, well, I'm a doctor, you're not. And well, in this case, they can't say that to me, but,
You're both.
it's like all this argument about it, whereas people know their bodies the best. And I like to say it's whatever works. So if it works to do a combination of Western medicine, Eastern medicine, homeopathics, what I do, topical healing, great. If it works to mostly focus on the light medicine, great. It doesn't have to be any one way. And if people respect other people and their choices, let them experiment. Let them figure out what works for them. Yeah. So that in and of itself is that evolution and that growth that's kind of like what we're here to do. So
yes. And I love how you said that, because, different things work for different people. And I really just feel like it's a matter of what resonates most with your soul. Right.
That's right.
And that's what I learned in evolutionary astrology. Like my North Node is in Leo, right? Which is the leader, the sign of the leader. And so I was like, why am I giving away all this authority, right, to all these other people and putting them on a pedestal? Right. As, Western medicine often does, right? The doctor will save me when I could save myself. Right.
Mm-hmm. And again, there's a lot, us doctors were never taught in school.
Yes.
We weren't taught quantum physics. Not that I could, I'm not a quantum physicist by any means, but I get the gist of how that is so powerful to realize that when we can connect to that 0 point field, that we can create whatever it is from there. And in the latest studies around that, like the One Field movie is really great to watch with Lynn McTaggart and Greg Braden, and just like how just with intention and the way I do it, I have a whole system, of course, because I'm that left brain, likes to work out. So I have a whole system, so it's very consistent and it's fast. But it's amazing how much data there is to actually support exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
Is work on the energetics. And in Chinese medicine, we talk about how the body does not get out of physical imbalance until probably decades when the energetic imbalance is there.
Yeah. And that's what creates, I know for me personally, I could speak, that's what created my physical conditions was energetics, right? Just a lack of boundaries, a lack of, right, being able to manage, right? Digestive issues, right? Spiritually is being unable to digest life, right? Not being overwhelmed, being, right, overstimulated. The pandemic, which I don't know if you want to talk about that just for a few moments in the perspective of a highly sensitive person.
Yes.
From my perspective, I believe it affected us at a deeper level, maybe than some other people. Like I know I had challenges with my husband truly understanding how it impacted me versus he was not as affected by it. And I didn't really connect the dots, as you said, that, highly sensitive people are more prone to these conditions, chronic conditions, but then of course the pandemic being a collective trauma.
Right.
It just really sent me into a spiral, and I know a lot of what I'm physically experiencing now is my body just kind of unearthing and unleashing, and I'm detoxing from a lot of that programming that we were fed, I believe, for a number of years.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity, yet a really difficult one for all of humanity to go through. And I'll give you an example. One of my nurse friends, she was in a leadership training with me and absolutely loved her. She was a lot younger than me, so I called her one of my kids because I have young people that I've mentored over the years that are a lot younger, and I just love seeing them grow and evolve. Anyway, so I said, "Can I adopt you?" She's like, "Yes, you can." So anyway, so she's a nurse and she was doing all this amazing work with nurses and teaching them meditation and stillness and, mindset, all this kind of stuff. Well, I didn't hear from her over the pandemic. And of course, stuff, everybody was so busy trying to like resurrect their businesses and doing whatever. And I hadn't heard from her. And then finally, I had a thought, and I thought, well, let me just check in. And so I asked her, she's in Australia. So I checked in, and she said, oh, I haven't been able to work because I got so depressed. I was suicidal. And so she was literally out of, she could not do her nursing. She could not do her beautiful stuff that she was doing. And so I said, permission to please tune in. And she's like, please do, right? So I did. And within like 2 minutes, we figured out that 90% of what she was feeling, the depression, everything, wasn't hers.
Yeah.
It was mass consciousness. I said, okay, first of all, you read my book. Okay. Second of all, you've got homework to do, right? So to reboot all those boundaries and that kind of thing. And, it was amazing because she just thought she just assumed it was her stuff. She assumed she was depressed. I'm like, no, you're feeling mostly other people's stuff. And because you're not aware of that, that's one of the mistakes that highly sensitive people make, is that they cannot discern what is theirs and what is not theirs. Now, you're lucky in that a lot of times people just need to have that awareness of, wait a second, is this mine? Sometimes that is enough to go, and it goes away. But for those that have a higher level of responsibility, they actually may need to specifically know, whose stuff is it? Why am I feeling it? Which boundary is down, right? So some people require that degree of, detail in order for spirit to go, okay, we got you. Right now, you know what you're healing. So it kind of depends on the person. But a lot of times people just ask, if they remember to ask, I wonder if this is mine. Now, because I practice the stillness practice, and that's like a freebie for everyone, stillnessonthefly.com, so they can go and get that 30 minute, it takes longer to explain than it does to do it. It takes like less than 3 minutes to do it, but it takes longer to explain it. So once you do that kind of stillness exercise where you can walk and talk and be in stillness at the same time, you can function, because I don't have patience to sit down for 60 minutes. Anyway, so it's practical. What happens is that you start to really get to know your base resonant energy field. Like, you get to know what is you, because you're doing it over and over and over again, like for a minute here, seconds here, 3 minutes here. Like, and so if I wake up and I'm in a dark space and I'm like, that part of me is like, I wonder whose stuff this is, right? And then we might have had an ascension upgrade. Maybe my boundary's down a little bit that day. Maybe and get this, sometimes it's there because I'm responsible to do a healing on behalf of whoever stuff I'm feeling. Most people will not have that level of responsibility. So I don't want people to freak out and go, oh my God, I don't know how to heal the world, right? So most people will not have that level of responsibility. But I know if I'm feeling it, I need to ask the question. And so, yeah, sometimes it'll be, all earth angels have an issue, or, somebody's getting attacked in India, or, something happening in the world. I'm like, okay, that's what I'm feeling. What do I need to do? Is it my job? Yes, no. Most of the time it is. If it's not, I go, okay, I don't need to feel that anyway. And by the way, send them some healing anyway, right? But if it is my job to heal, I may need more details. And then usually by the time I heal the other, I am good to go, seconds. And then I'm like, oh, I'm back to me. And isn't it powerful to be able to know, right? Is it my stuff? Isn't it my stuff? And then what do I do if it's not my stuff?
Yes.
Do I replete my boundaries? Do I restore them? Do I heal the other person? What's the instructions? And that's why I'm really passionate about teaching my Tobacco healing method, because we get to teach people all those details and how to do that. And it's not that it's really easy. It's not that hard at all.
Thank you so much. This is really powerful, because I think a lot of people, maybe even listening, are not even aware of that powerful question that you said, like, is this mine or is this someone else's? Right. And then at the level that you are, well, maybe it's my job to heal that other source, right? To heal them, and as well as heal myself. But I think that one powerful question, and I will link this up in the show notes, your Stillness on the Fly freebie, right? For someone to tap into this sort of energy in just 3 minutes is really, really powerful, to be able to discern, right? Is this mine? Or is this
you get to know yourself so well. So I know if I'm feeling a little not me or a little off.
Yeah.
I also teach people divine muscle testing. So we connect to source and we teach them how to do a self muscle testing method. And I sometimes will check in. I'll check in if I'm me, if I'm proxying for someone, which means that I am running their energy through my body to heal them. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not appropriate. So if it's not appropriate, then I have to find out why I'm doing it. And if it is appropriate, I can often heal the other much faster than just using my body's like energy field to do it. So then it's like 2 seconds, heal them, I'm back to me, we're good to go. And I can literally feel the difference in like if I'm exercising, for example, like if I'm feeling a little bit like, I can't do my push-ups as well. I wonder if I'm me, you know? Like there's all these different ways. And sometimes I'd still forget. Like today, you know, I'm doing the workout. My double unders were great. So, you know, it was a little hard to tell, but my push-ups, I was like, I thought I would be a little stronger on the push-ups. But it wasn't until I started doing a healing session on a VIP client when I check my muscle testing, show me yes, show me no. My name is Karen Can. My name is not Karen Can. Am I proxying? Is Karen Can proxying? Is Karen Can, you know, reversed, partially reversed? I did find out I was partially reversed. So part of the energy was running not in the right direction in myself. So we corrected that in 2 seconds. And then I was back to being able to muscle test for my client. And I was like, oh, that makes sense why I wasn't pushing up as strongly as I was expecting. But it was so subtle.
Yes. And what a comforting practice too, because I think so many of us walk around kind of blind, like not really knowing, you know, why something is off or why is my body just feeling off.
Right. It's so frustrating not to know sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it aligns, like you said, that's a beautiful practice of aligning that sort of logical, right? Because you're getting the answer with the spirit, right? With that creative right brain type of energy. With the work that you do. So I love that. The muscle testing, the proxying, and your Tolbacan method, which I would love to dive into and learn a bit about that as well for anyone listening or interested in working with you and learning more. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to share the love with somebody in your world that really needs this message today. And if you're feeling extra generous, I would absolutely love if you would subscribe to my show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen, and rate and review. Interested to know how this show has helped you come alive.